All right, so I thought I'd do a quick, well, maybe not so quick video on what test-driven development looks like. So this is probably the most important thing I want to convey to new recruits, new developers, is how important test-driven development is to us. And I can go on and on about it, but a lot of people don't, or maybe they might have a hard time understanding the workflow of test-driven development. So I found it very useful to see someone actually doing proper test-driven development. And so that's what I'm going to do here. So let me get right into it. Without getting too far into the weeds about what these things are, I'm working on this thing called New Slide Form. Now, it's already been built out a little bit. I'm going to put the source code on this side, and I'm going to put the test code on this side. So let's get that sorted out. Let me hide that side thing. And this class, it's a new slide form. So it's a form. Its main purpose is you guys are going to figure this out as you get into it, but when we make a new slide in our player, there's two things that are really important when you're creating that new slide. I need to know I want to know a name for that slide, and I want to know the ID of the app that you're going to be using to render that slide. So those are both strings, so pretty easy to do. The catchy part is that we need some validation on the name, and we don't have that implemented. So the name, we want a character limit of 40. That's the only validation we're going to start with. So you can't have a name longer than 40. We might also do some character types in there at some point. You can't do some like SQL injection or anything in there. So anyways, we have a character limit here. It's right there. This is the class. It's extended in an observable entity. I won't dive into what that is. The key here is, though, notice it's got a get and a set for the name, and it's got a get and a set for the app ID. We do have these private memoized slide app ID. Let me change this to slide app. I'm just going to call this app ID. This isn't that important. I'm just going to throw that in right now. And then we have this memoized slide name. This is for notification for our observer pattern down the road. Don't worry about that too much. Key thing here is we got a name and an app ID. We also have a few read-only parameters down here. This is because we expect this to be presented to the user in a form of some sort. We don't really care what that form looks like, but we expect the form to have a title, to probably have a cancel button, and to have a submit button. And so those are labels. And so this is where we defined what to display to the user. If there's a title, put this up there. If there's a cancel label, if there's a cancel button, this is what the label should look like. And same with the submit button. So we got create slide. All right, so that's where we are to start with. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit, we're going to start developing. So let's go ahead. First thing you do when you're developing, test-driven development, get your tests going. So we're going to do npm test. And actually, I'm going to focus, well, let me just get npm test going. This project has a whole lot of unit tests going on because we've been good test-driven developers. So I'm going to go ahead and hit P on this, and I'm going to hit P again, and we're going to limit this down to this particular test. So we're going to do new slide form test. So you can see that one. All right, that's going to limit our testing to just run on this particular slide. Now, over here, we've got our new slide form test. This is the test that correlates. Let me just show you some project structure. The way these things look is just like this. This is the script we're working in. It's new slide form.ts, and this is the test right next to it. So you'll see all of our scripts, no matter where you are, should, for the most part, 99% of the time, should have a test right next to it. All right. So here's our new slide form test right over here. And you could see we've already tested all this other code we've written. Any logic in here should be tested. And so this is the pattern you're going to see in most of our tests. You're going to see this little thing at the top, a little private function called make test rig. This is a function that you put all your setup in. So no matter what you're building, you typically have setup you're going to do for every test. You put that into here. So in this particular test, I'm making my new slide form. So I'm instantiating the class in the test rig. So that's here. We are following an observer pattern. So we do make an observer. and we add that observer, and then we return it. So pretty simple. So every single one of our tests, we create let's rename this. Here's the first test. Oh, well, let's get this thing going. So you can see we've got make test grid going on here. And then after that, I like to wrap my tests in a describe block. It makes it easier to read. What it looks like down here is if you look at our testing output, it just forms it nicely. New slide form. It puts it, that's right here, new slide form. And I like using its as opposed to test because it helps you set up this string a little better and it makes it readable in here. New slide form notifies when the name changes. Does not notify if there is no name change. Notifies when the app ID changes. Does not notify, so on and so forth. So we tend to like this pattern just because it reads nice. If any of these tests were to fail, then it shows up. Let me actually make one of these tests fail. So we're going to just comment out that. And if we did it right, that should cause a test to fail. So let's see what happens. All right. So if I scroll up, I can see fail, new slide form. It's failing to notify when the slide app changes. So that's why we do it that way. It just looks good. It's easy to read. It's easy to debug. Okay. So that's how we set this thing up. You can see we're all tested. We're all running. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick refactor. As you're working through, one of the beauties of test-driven development is it allows you to be what we jokingly call it, be a good Boy Scout. Leave it cleaner than you found it. As you're working through these slides, or as you're working through any script, if you see anything that you're like, that name isn't great, I prefer a different name. Or you might see some you could tell it's like a remnant of a refactor that the name wasn't updated. You can refactor all you want, and as long as the tests are passing, you know you're not hurting anything. So here's an example. Well, one thing you noticed was I did rename the slide app ID, or the memoized app ID. Probably should have shown that in test-driven development, but anyways, you can see here's a remnant of a refactor. We used to call it new slide dialog, and we've changed it to new slide form. So let me go ahead and just clean that up real quick. This is now going to be called new slide form. I doubt if renaming is going to break anything, but let's just check it out. And it all should pass, and it did. All right, great. So let's go ahead and get this going. All right, let's talk about some new features. What I like doing is just to think through, okay, what am I going to do? First thing, I want to add, okay, so we know we've got this validation, max character limit equal 40. The max, let's rename this real quick to max name. I already have it. Name, max character limit is 40. But this is not being applied. Let's go ahead and see what happens. So let's roll down here. Now I talked to my designer, Jordan, about this. And we have decided that if the name exceeds 40 characters, we're going to go ahead and not clip it. We're just going to show some validation messages. So I'm going to add a validation message. Now, another thing I want to do is, since we are limiting the text back to the user, I want to also do some feedback message that looks something like, 25 out of 50 character, actually it's 40 characters CHR used, something like that. So I want it to look something like that. So now I can see that we're going to have two messages. We could call this one message here. Let's do a message. Let's do a get message, which is a string. And let's do a get name is valid. And that's a bool. And that's going to control some stuff. I'm imagining on the front end, maybe the feedback text will change color. So let's see. All right. So part of test-driven development is you should get this thing to do this. So we're just it should compile. And so right now we have compilation errors. So even though tests are passing, it's kind of fake because it's this thing isn't, you can see it's not going to compile. So let's do return. Oh, I got caps lock on. An empty string. All right. And we're going to just return true. Just for now. We'll write tests to do this. All right, another test. Well, okay, let's go ahead and finish this off. So first off, let's get our message. So let's go over here. What do we want? Well, let's write our test first. So notice we're not writing any logic in here until we write a failing test first. So it gives us a message regarding how many characters are left. All right. So we'll just use our rig up here. Now, new slide form. We don't need our observer. We're not checking for notifications. So we're going to do this new slide form dot name equals hello world. All right. So now we see this is, let's count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we've got 40 minus 11, 29. All right, so we should have something like, I'm just going to write it down real quick. Let's see, what do I want? So now we've got that. We're expecting now new slide form dot message to equal, what do we want to say? We expect it to be something like, what do you think? I'm trying to think of an example where I've seen this before. You know where I've seen this is up in here, in this guy. Let me add some changes in here, and somewhere I feel like I've seen some character limits in here. No, not going to do it for me. Trying to think of some places I've seen character limits. Well, doesn't matter a ton. We can refactor this as we go. We're going to say, what did we say? Let me jump back over to my calculator. Oh, I lost it. I think it's 11. What isn't it? 11 of 40 characters used. We can refactor this down the road, but this is what we should see. Or it could say something like maybe 29 characters left. What do we think? 29 characters. Yeah. We're going to start with this. We can always come back and refactor it. So this is going to get us going. So this should fail, right? Because there's no logic. So here we go. Oh, it's failed. Good. Perfect. So now we're up here. Message. We're going to say let message equal, well, let's do it constant. Constant message is going to equal, we're going to do a little fancy strings. We're going to do dollar sign this. We're going to use this dot name dot length of, and then we're going to do dollar sign this dot max characters limit, max name character limit, characters used. All right, now we return the message. All right, perfect. All right, so notice what we did. We added a test. Now that test is passing. Now, let's add some more. Okay, if the slide name is empty or no characters, we should return a different message, and the name is valid should be false because it's not a valid name. So it's warns, gives us feedback if the name is empty. P-T-Y. All right. All right. So now we're going to do this. Let's get into this. So let's do this. Now I know the new, well, we're just going to force the new slide name. I was probably going to be empty, but let's just be thorough here and set the new slide name to empty. Probably is not set. Now what we expect, what do we expect? We expect the message to say slide name cannot be empty. All right, that's what we expect. So now let's get this going again. So let's do this. Let's make this into a let. All right, we're going to just default it to that. Now we're going to say if this dot name dot length is equal to 0. Actually, let's just do a straight up equals empty. Message is going to equal slide name cannot be empty. All right, great. Let's see. That should pass. There we go. So now you can see we got all our tests passed. All right, let's add some more. Okay. It gives us feedback if the slide name is too long. All right, let's do that. So let's do this. Now, this time we're going to put a really, this is a slide name that is way too long. It can. All right, let's see how far we get on that. That's probably more. We're going to have to count this out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 40, 41. Hey, there it is. I think that's it. I think that's too long. And this slide name is limited to 40 characters. All right, great. Slide name is limited to 40 characters. Let's see. Okay, else if this dot name dot length is greater. I'm just thinking about something here. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Is greater than name max character limit. We're going to do this message. Slide name. Okay. Hey, there we go. We passed. Now, as much as this is a cool way to do this, you might think to yourself, all right, this is a little bit fragile, right? We have designed this to be somewhat of a variable. It's a constant. I mean, it's a read-only, but the idea here is if 2 weeks down the road, we're like, you know what, we need more characters or we need less characters, we could just come in here and say 45, right? And this no longer makes sense. This starts to fail, and this shouldn't fail. That's a brittle test. We have set this up to be a brittle test. Essentially, let's build this in a little better. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to make our own slide name. Let me see. What we need to do is we need to make a name that is a variable length, right? Well, first off, this should come back as $. This should come back. Well, I shouldn't be doing this side. Let's get back to here. This should be limited to, I expect this to actually be, oh, see, here's another fragile test. Let's go ahead and fix this up too. So we got that 40 built in a little too much. Let's try to clean that up a little bit. Let's make this $. What is this called? New slide form? Dot max character limit. That should work. Okay. Now what we need to do is okay, let's see what's failing now. Let's check this real quick. Dot only. Quick little check. Okay, so we didn't break it there. Oops. All right, so where are we failing? Which one's failing? Yeah, okay, it's this 45 character limit. All right, so we need to write a little, what we need to do is gonna do a little funky. We're gonna do this. No, we're gonna do a for loop. Let's do a quick for loop. Index is gonna equal 0. Index is an array length of, we're gonna do new slide form dot max character limit and clamp it to that link. So we're going to bop along. And essentially what we're going to do is every time we're going to loop through, we're going to essentially make our own string. So let's do a let name equal an empty string. And then we're going to do name, we're going to plus equal just a letter A. Okay. And what that's going to do is it's going to build up a string that it's going to be all A's, but it's going to be the character limit long. All right. So now let's do this. And then at the end, because we went to, we got to add one more. We're to the character limit. Let's add one more. Name plus equal period at the end. A lot of A's and then a period. All right. Now let's do this. So now we can do new slide name is equal to that, and slide name is limited to, and then we should have this in there instead. And we need to do a different type of quote on that. All right, let's see how that works. That should pass. Oh, gotta scroll to the bottom. Did not pass. All right, what did we get? Say that one more time. Slide name is limited to expected received. Oh, yeah, we didn't put it in here. So that makes sense. There we go. Oh, we got to change this to a little thing. Different character. There we go. Now, hopefully that passes. Hey, there we're passing again. So now we should be able to pop this up to like 55. Let's drop it down to, no, let's put it up to 100. Shouldn't matter, right? It should pass. There we go. All right, so let's drop this back down to 40, what we want. There we go. Everything should pass. All right, what else we got? Okay, next thing. I think our messages are good. Now, the front end's going to want to probably know if this message is just a normal, like a gray, subtle message telling you how many characters you have left, or if it needs to display this message as a warning. Something is wrong here. You got to fix it, okay? So that's where this name is valid is going to come in. So let's go ahead and figure that out. So let's grab this guy because this is a good message that we know. So name is valid for a world string. Now you could argue that this is fragile. Well, let me go ahead and finish this. Name is valid to equal true. You could argue that this is a fragile test as well as this one up here, because if we were to drop the max character limit down below whatever number of characters this is, it would start to fail. And I would buy that, but it doesn't feel to me to be a reasonable fragility. We're really going to drop the character limit down to something that won't even hold hello world? I kind of doubt it. And the reason why I'm going to just avoid this is because this is kind of hard to figure. This is not like intuitive to look at. Somebody's going to come along in 3 weeks and be like, what the hell is he doing here, right? It's kind of gross. It fits the bill, but at the same time, it wouldn't make sense to have a bunch of A's up here. I would argue. Now, this is just an opinion. So we're going to let it slide. So when name is valid, that should equal true. Now it is going to pass because we're just hard coding it to true. So if I were to set this to false, it should fail. All right, so let's get it failing. Well, no, let's get it passing. Well, yeah, we'll get it true. So it is going to pass. Now, obviously, we don't want to hard code that. It So this is not really formed well. It sets the name as valid for hello world. Now that is a literal test. Okay, so now let's do sets the name as invalid if empty. PTY. All right, there we go. So there we go. Now let's grab, we've already done this up here. Let's grab this test, and this time we're going to grab this expect, and we're going to say that is false. All right, great. So now that's going to fail. So here's what we do. We're going to do our tests. If this dot name is equal to empty, return false. Easy. Else, return true. All right, there's that. All right, there we go. That's passing. Now, it sets the name, no, it sets the name is valid to false if it is too long. All right, now we're going to grab this monkey business up here, and this is what our test should come back as. So we're going to expect this. So again, we're grabbing and we're making that monkey business name. And yeah, so we've got our name is valid should be false. And that's because we're going to look for this test right here. So let's drop this in here. Ooh, messed that up. Format that. If we're going to return false. All right, there we go. Okay, now our tests are passing there. Okay, what else are we going to do? There's another bool or another thing I want to add. So imagine that form we're going to build, either it's a dialogue or some sort of thing. There's going to be a submit button, and we're going to want, because we're allowing, well, first off, we know you cannot submit if you haven't added an ID. If you don't have an app selected, you shouldn't be able to submit. And if you do not have a slide name, a valid slide name, you should not be able to submit. So let's add another public get can submit. And this is going to be a bool. And we'll just set it to false, true for now. Doesn't matter. All right, so now it allows or sets can submit only if there is a valid name and app ID. All right, so this one, so a lot of times you're trying to limit your test to just one test. It makes it easier later to figure it out. It feels like a lot more stuff going on. It feels like you have to do a lot more as a developer. That's fine. But trust me that you don't want to write one test that's got a ton of expects in it, or you want to try to avoid that. And you'll figure that out later down the road when you're going back and you're reading someone else's test and it's a super complicated, like lots of tests, and one of them's failing. You got to figure out which one. So you're trying to do, so these are ideal. One tests are ideal. Sometimes though, we're going to run into these like mixtures where, okay, if you have this and that, it should be this, but it has this and that, it should be true. Actually, let's do it right. Let's do it right. If can submit if there's a valid ID and an app ID. So let's just do it. So we're going to do this. Grab that guy. We're going to go ahead and just set our new slide name to Hello World. And we're going to set the app ID, new slide form app ID. ID is going to equal app1, some app ID. We don't know. We don't care what that is. Now we expect that new slide form can submit to equal true. Perfect. So that should pass. It's going to pass because we got hard coded. So if we go to false, that should go to false. All right, let's start putting our fail cases in here. So it sets can it unsets can submit if there is no app ID. All right, let's do that. So if there's no app ID, it should go to false. So let's take this out. App ID, let's just make it empty. And this should be false. All right. So now we got to start adding logic in here. Public get. All right. So if this dot app ID equals that, return false. Else. All right. Next test. Let's grab our passing test first. I like to kind of grab the passing one and make it fail. But let's grab this message. Next thing we're going to do. It unsets the can submit if there is no name. So do that. There we go. Oops, that's an H. That should be okay. So now else if, let's just grab this guy. Actually, it's right there. Else if. There we go. Return false. Let's add an else at the bottom here just to kind of close this guy up. All right. Okay, good. All right, let's do, wait, this should be false. Sets, whoop, we got this weird word. This should be unsets. Unsets can submit if there is no app ID. You know, it's hard to read. Let's do it this way. Sets can submit to false if there is no. So let's write this out. To true, to false. Grab this. Put that there. All right, that makes it easier to read. Let's do another one. Sets can submit to false if the name is too long. All right, let's do our monkey. You know what? We've done this monkey business with the name enough times. Let's do a little function. Make long name. And we're going to return a string. Make name. I'm going to do this different. A little verbose, but that's good. Make name that is too long. Now we're going to grab this. And we're going to return name. That's a little more readable. Oh, shoot. Okay, we need max care. Let's grab this. This is a number. There we go. All right, now let's get back up here. Name. Let's do this constant. Name equals make name that is too long, and we'll pass in this. There we go. Now, in fact, we can do this. Now, you see what we did? Just a little cleanup. It makes it very clear what's going on with that for loop. That for loop was junky, right? People are like, what the heck are you doing there? If you poke around and long enough, you can spend 2 minutes figuring, I don't know. You can spend some time thinking through that. But we don't want to, that's focus and energy that we don't necessarily need to expend. But we could just name it the function that makes sense and move on, so that now you're reading through this thing and you say make name that is too long. Oh, and you're like, oh, that's great. All right. And in fact, you know, we talked about the brittleness of this one. Make we could do this. We could change the hello world out. We're gonna push that down the way. All right. So now we need to come down here. We're gonna do the same thing. Make name that is too long. And there we go. That one should fail as well. All right, let's come in here and do this and just grab this guy. Put that right here. Put a little bracket on it. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, I think this is a good, I think we're done with features. Yep. I think we are. Now it's time to refactor. So good. So let's take a note of what we've done. We have over here in our tests, we have defined our essence, our goals we were shooting for with this entity. You know, we get a feedback if the name is empty. This is our documentation now. Now this is very easy, much easier for the next person to come through. And when I hand this off to you guys, and you're like, oh, I see what he's trying to do. We need to make sure this is the input, the output, right? When we say when the word is hello world, when the name is hello world, the name is valid is true, right? That's the spirit of this piece of code. It's not the literal like checking of the code. It's the spirit of the code, which is good. We want that. And you can this essentially acts as our documentation. Now we can come over to this side. Let's go ahead and just close this test down because we're no longer worried about it. Now, the next part of our job as a good developer is to run through this after we've developed and look at it. Does it look good? Does it look good? Or is this going to be easy to read? So I'm just going to do some cleanup, some refactor on this. And if I do everything right, it should still pass. First thing, I'm going to push these. These feel like things that should go to the top. I mean, they just seem like they're up here. They're read-onlys. And so they belong at the top. So let's format that up there. We got our, let's see, do we like this name? Name character limit. Let's just do name. We don't need max in there. Just name character limit. There we go. And that's next to our slide name. Memoize slide name. We'll leave that alone. We got our name. All right. Message. It's kind of generic. Like from the outside, looking at this, think about what you're going to see as your developer working with this new slide form. You're going to hit new slide form dot, and you're going to see message. That's maybe a little too vague, right? You're going to be like, what's the message for? What's this message for? So let's do name. Let's rename this to name feedback. Did I do that right? I don't think I did. I need to hit refactor. Let's do this again. Let's see. Message. Instead of message, we're going to say name feedback. All right. There we go. Okay, let's read this. Spread this out a little bit. This looks good. A little readable there. We could do a switch on this. We could, I mean, it's subtle. We could just do this, else return this instead. We could say this. Let's try this out, see if this is more readable. And we're just going to grab this guy. There. Do we like that? Is that readable? Yeah, I think it is. Okay. Great. Side note, I do like doing this, you know, checking is the name invalid, checking is get feedback. You know, we could do this validation and store it when we're setting right here. So right here is our setter for name. So when name comes in, and if we were going to clamp the name, this is where we would do it. And this is probably where we would have to set the feedback. But since we're going to allow a long name to show up and be represented to the end user, I like to move these is valid and stuff, these checkers. I don't like to set them. You know, we could have a private member that says name, that sets, is the name valid, true or false, inside when we set the name. I don't tend to like those. Instead, I like to leave it in a getter, because that is, you know, you're always using the freshest name. You're actually checking the name when this is being called. If you force it into here, there are times when the name, you might run into situations where the name gets set somewhere else, and then your validator is not working anymore. So I like to try to keep my validators, you know, these kind of things, name feedback and name is valid. You try to push them into gets if you can. All right, app ID. We already refactored that to be a name. And then we've got this get can submit. All right, I think we're going to call this good. So that's it. That is an example of test-driven development. You can see the key things were, one, if we needed to stub in some parameters or getters or whatever into our class, we did. We stubbed it in, but we just put in, whatever it was to get it to compile. No logic. We may have needed to get our getters in there, but no logic. Then we went over here to our form, to our test, and we built a test first. And we tried to limit it to one test, and we tried to make sure these weren't brittle tests. And once we wrote that test, our test should fail. And then we jump back over to player form, and we get the test to pass for that one use case. And we just kept hopping back and forth, back and forth. Just pay attention to that frequency. It's very fast. Back and forth, back and forth. Now, at the end of that, once we got done with our features that we wanted to add, we might add a feature list. We might have some acceptance criteria in a card or something. Anywhere, somewhere that told us the test, gave us an idea of the test we should have wrote. Also, as we went along, we found, as you're writing code, you're seeing, as a developer, you're like, oh, I see a problem here. I see an edge case that could happen. What happens if we set this thing to whatever? You would write a test for that too. You would address that right away. Or you would write tests to make sure that, your edge cases are taken care of. Then after we got all of our functions doing, our features were added. We added our features. We wanted this name is valid, name feedback, and get can submit. Once we had those features set up, then we rolled back in, closed down our test. We're done testing. The tests cover the features. Then we ran through our test, our code, and we made sure it was readable. If we see anything we don't like, we organized it. Some other things we didn't really run into is, we want to try to avoid deep indentations. If you start getting deep indentations, bust them out into, private functions. And if you did your test right, when you're doing that refactor, you shouldn't have to rewrite tests. If you bust out private functions, the test will tell you if they're good, because they should just keep on passing. You should not be you can't test private functions anyways. So your test should keep on passing. All right, we're going to call it good. How do I stop this video? Let me get to that. All right, see you guys.